When I drive through Oklahoma, I can't help but think of you. And for reasons still unclear to me, we didn't much get by. We'd stack up like dominoes and we'd fall down each time. Well, cowboy.
What's up, guys? Welcome back. Welcome back, Chris, to the show. Chris, co-host, made it this time. Proud to have you, buddy.
Thanks, man.
We are joined today by Lieutenant Colonel. I had to ask his rank just a moment ago because I can never remember. Lieutenant Colonel in the Air Force, Nick Hall. Nick, how are you today?
I'm great, guys. Thanks for having me on. Real excited.
I saw that prime rib, the picture.
Yeah.
Looks delicious.
I got it back over there. I just put it on. I'm doing a prime rib today and then a brisket tomorrow. That way I got the prime in case I mess the brisket up.
You got to back up.
Yeah.
The briskets are super forgiving. You'll be okay. I'll have to throw you into the Facebook group. We have one that's like Bourbon, Brew, and Barbecue, I think is what he called it. We just started the other day, just sharing our worldly travels of what we smoke or what we eat that's smoked meats or, you know, distilled spirits and beer. And I'm a home brewer. I haven't homebrewed in a while.
Yeah, you should add Nick to that.
You don't want to be on that?
Add
Is that
Nick.
what you're saying, Chris?
No, I do want to be on it. You just haven't added me. Like you're
I'm
like
sorry.
adding your guests and not
I
me.
didn't realize.
No, it's cool. Like I'm not like jealous or
It doesn't
whatever.
sound
but,
like
it'd just be cool. I have a smoker.
Oh, man. All right, I'll get you both on there. We'll do it. We can have, you know, another place to put pictures of our meat. I don't know. That sounds awkward. Anyway, Nick,
Yeah.
Lieutenant Colonel in the Air Force. You know, we make fun of the Air Force and the Army a lot, but honestly, you're the smarter of the individuals in this podcast because
No.
I was in Kuwait, in Afghanistan, and Iraq, and I slept in crappy tents, and well, sometimes we had better buildings, but they were still Army buildings.
Right.
In Kuwait, they literally rented out all of Kuwait City, Holiday Inn or something, to put the Air Force in.
Yeah.
So, like,
You know,
y'all are way smarter than us.
there's no reason to rough it when you don't have to. No, I love the Army too. I did a deployment with the Army to Afghanistan in 2009, 2010. I mean, the Army is really good at organizing efficiently on a mass scale. And the Air Force is really good at innovation, which is about the opposite of that, right?
Right.
And so it's interesting.
That's
So hold on, before we go any further, your Air Force. but
Well,
you did a
yeah,
deployment
back
with
in-
the Army.
I think I remember when it started, but 2009, we had these things called provincial reconstruction teams. Daniel, I don't know if you ever heard of those, but
no, I don't think so.
yeah, we had them in Iraq and Afghanistan, and there were 12 of them in Afghanistan. 6 were commanded by an Air Force officer, 6 by a Navy officer. But then the kind of security element of it was an Army platoon, and then we shared a FOB out in eastern Afghanistan, Laghman province, with the 1221 Cav, Nevada National Guard unit, and then their security platoon was our security platoon was from the 1221, and so
Gotcha.
we shared resources, and then I ended up taking over for all of the intel. Basically, I was a captain at the time, just because I was like the senior intelligence human in the area. So but you could get anything. I mean, our it was kind of a joint unit, the PRT. So we had we even had like a State Department rep, U.S. Department of Agriculture rep, but like part of our staff, like our S4 was Army, because we're in the Army system, but he could get anything. His name was Russ Davis, awesome guy.
S4, for y'all that don't know, is like our supply. Like that's where you go to get items.
Yeah.
trucks, ammo, fuel, water, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, that's S4 does that.
But yeah, I loved being with the Army.
Well, let me ask this then. What makes it so an S4 can get items? Can they get more items if they've been around longer, if they know certain people, or is
Now you're asking
what I
about
mean?
the
Like,
back
that's my
end. Yeah,
question.
yeah.
That's where you get a little shaky.
Okay,
S4
I
is
don't,
just,
like I said, I don't know what I can ask
so
about and what
we
I
just
can't.
divide up all of the. You think about the military is just another community, and so you have a supply chain in the United States, but it's like Walmart and whoever drives their trucks. So it's like S4 just does all that for you. They can get any type of supplies. Yes, there are some that are a lot handier than others, right? There's some out there that that they know the ropes and they can get you. I won't say off the book, but
Yeah, well, and you know, the flip side obviously is as huge. You know, the Department of Defense is a huge bureaucratic organization, so a lot of things move slow, right? But when you're deployed, it's a little bit different. You know, I mean, you could in Afghanistan, I could like jump on a helicopter, you know, and just like go wherever. It's kind of weird. So it's a little bit different, but
yeah. So we were talking earlier that you did some time in Hawaii, right?
yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I've been I think about 19 and a half years right now is where we're at. And I'm married. My wife and I got married right after we graduated from Baylor. I did ROTC there, and let's see, you know, graduated, commissioned, and got married within about a week and a half of time, right? And then
But did you go get a car on a 49%?
I did not.
APR?
I did not.
Okay. See, that's where you're better than the Army.
Yeah. And so, yeah, right now we're here. We're in Pike Road, Alabama, which is down the far east side of Montgomery, Maxwell Air Force Base, where I'm stationed. But yeah, right prior to that, I was in Hawaii as a squadron commander, and I'm an intelligence officer by trade. So I was commanding an intelligence unit there, which was a lot of fun.
The all the different jobs, like it seems like the Air Force just does intelligence. Like every time I see an Air Force person, they're nice and clean. Like I don't think I've ever seen one that had like do work. There are the dudes at the security gate, I guess, to where the Army just started renting that out to other people. It seems
Right.
like, especially overseas.
Yeah.
We just start paying civilians to do it. Like, but y'all got pretty good gig over there.
Yeah, well, and that's the cool thing too about just the military in general is I've always been an intelligence officer, but I don't think I've ever done the same job more than 2 years in a row, right? Because it changes based on what type of unit you're in or where you are, whether that's your focus area or just the type of work that you're doing. And I've done some other stuff like, you know, being a executive officer, which is like an administrative assistant for, you know.
Don't let my XO hear you say that. It'll hurt his feelings.
Oh yeah. Why was he?
That he's an administrative assistant.
Well, you know, I mean, those guys are busy, right? So you try to cue everything up for them, you know, prepare them to do what they're going to do. But yeah, just a lot of different places and a lot of different experiences for sure.
I'm only a year behind you in retirement.
Okay.
So yours is coming. I'm at 18 and a half
Yeah.
years right now.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the end of it, I think. I talked about it with Mark on last night, and he retired a few years ago. He was a few years ahead of me in enlisting. And it's like one of those things you look forward to, but also it's going to be so sad. It's different.
Yeah.
Right? You committed your life to it.
So you did some active duty time, is that right?
No, just the deployments.
Okay.
Like I've been National Guard my entire
Okay.
career, minus the 3 deployments, which of course, you know, we had to go on active duty status for that.
Yeah.
But nope, just a lowly old guardsman. It's made it bearable. I don't know that I could live within the military's like parameters for 365 days a year. It's just, I'm not built that way. I don't know. I mean, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just like it's nice. I get a taste of it once a month, and then I'm like, yeah, I remember. I don't. Maybe I don't like the taste of that.
Yeah, I mean, it might depend on what you do, because to me, I feel like I've always not do whatever I want, but basically, you know, take the initiative that I need to take without asking permission, right? And say like, hey, let's get a solution, and you know, without being told what to do, which for me is the worst. I really don't, you know, somebody tells me what to do, I'm going to kind of hear what they said and then do what I think is right, but make it kind of fit what they said, right? Like that's,
I love it. And what is the old saying? Like, you can tell me what to do or how to do it, but you can't do both, right?
Yeah. You know, but so I've always felt like that's what people wanted, is they wanted me to take initiative and figure things out. And to me, that's the fun part, is hard problems and how do we get a group of people to achieve something that seems really hard and maybe they don't think that they can achieve, but there's definitely a way.
The military is strange in that fact, and we're going to talk about coaching here in a minute because all three of us are football coaches, but it's kind of the same thing. Like, you want people to have initiative, but if they start to outshine the person in front of them or produce too good of a quality, or, you know, then it's like, oh, got to get back under my thumb. I've experienced that. I've experienced coaches that didn't do that.
Right.
But I've seen that in the military a lot. Like, that is I've seen it a ton in that. Yes, I want you to have initiative. I don't want to have to tell you how to do every single thing in your entire career, but don't get too crazy. Like, don't have too much initiative, right? I didn't tell you to do
I'm
that.
still your boss, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a very strange paradigm or dynamic.
That's like as you were discussing that, and like, okay, you want me to get this done? I'll get this done, but I'm going to do it my way. Like, I was like, that's what football coaching is. Like, that's what I wanted as a head coach. I didn't want to tell someone how something had to be done. I just wanted to say, hey, I want this done. Like, with special teams, I had nothing to do with special teams other than lining up to tricky swinging gates or punts. But I said, I want to make sure we retain possession, and I want you to practice 2-point conversions with our kicking team. And that guy took it and ran with it. And when he asked too many questions, I was like, yeah, you're not the guy that I want to do this if you have to ask me this many questions, because I'm asking you to do it. Take it and run
we
with
do
it.
have that. We have to understand that the military is really bad. In the military, you get 2 years to get proficient at your job, and they're like, well, time to promote, right? You've got to go somewhere else now. Nick, you kind of discussed it. I think officers are even worse than NCOs. Like, NCOs, we can kind of get bottlenecked and stuck, but it seems like officers, man, they do their 2-year stint at that and bye.
Yeah.
And so we do have to worry about the effectiveness of those underneath us in the military, right? Like, can they actually do the job I'm telling them? Just bring me results. Don't ask a lot of questions. Coaching is kind of the same way, though, because I feel like it's an old man's game, and we're getting less and less coaches, which obviously if the pool shrinks, you're going to get less talented coaches. Not to say they're all bad or good. It's just kind of it's a numbers game.
Right.
And so you got to put a lot of faith and trust in guys that may not know what to do just yet. Part of that development piece.
Yeah. And Chris, you're exactly, there's so many analogies, and Daniel, you've talked about this too, on, I think, both of your other podcasts, but like that professional development piece. I mean, the military is big on that, and I feel like we do a pretty good job. It obviously depends on the person, right? But it's a focus area, right? It's like, hey, here's what we need you to do. Here's the things that you need to kind of work on in this period of time to get to the next level or whatever. And I feel like there's, in my limited time, right, in coaching, it's definitely necessary, right? Because Chris, like you said, yeah, you absolutely want people to to take the initiative. But there's also things that you don't know, right? And um, having somebody to say, "Hey, have you thought about it this way?" And you're like, "No," um, something like that is absolutely good. And I'm really blessed here to be around a lot of good coaches that do that for sure. But yeah, a ton of analogies. Totally agree.
But I say a lot.
So, what is like military professional development like? Like, do they just say like, "Hey, Nick, you really need to get better at this, and then here's resources,"
Yeah,
or is it?
I
Good
mean,
luck,
I'm
go
not
figure it
sure
out?
how the Army does it. In the enlisted ranks, there's basically career development milestones that you're supposed to always be. And so there's like skill levels. Does Army have that, Daniel? So it's like level 3, level 5, level 7 in your career.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
We have we call them. You just got to go to your NCOSs, your NCO development courses. I don't remember what the letters stand for.
Yes, yeah, and actually that's what I'm doing right now. Is I'm a faculty member of our global college, which does all the distance learning for the Air Force. So anybody that can't come in residence to Maxwell for the professional schools that you are supposed to get at various ranks, then we provide that via distance learning. But so there's those gates, and then and that's across all career fields. Are those
Right.
at different ranks, and then inside of your career fields, you have different skills that you got to hit, and you should have somebody. Your supervisor really is the one that's supposed to be getting you proficient and trained on that, and then sign you off. And then as a commander, I had to submit a report every month. It's like, hey, here's how all of my airmen are progressing on their skills, to make sure that we're doing that, and that I'm providing the time and the resources for my supervisors to spend with their airmen to do that. So it's definitely a program, if you will. It's a framework we have that we try to make sure people do.
Yeah, with the enlisted side of that looks a little different. We just and National Guard looks different than active duty,
Right.
obviously, because National Guard we get 12 weekends a year
Yeah.
to train, and then a 2-week window in the summer to go out and kind of do that in consecutive days so that we can get more proficient. And then we always get a train up if we get deployed to go do our job. We usually get like 30 days to like, hey, we're going to do our job every day for 30 days to get. But then we have schools. There's we call it hip pocket training.
Mhm.
Like this coming up weekend in January, it's my job. One of my jobs is the NCO DP or development program, where I'm going to go in and give like an hour lecture, 2-hour lecture, whatever, on my given topic. And then those topics fall under a window that the commander says, the commander's responsible for training. So when he says, hey, this is what the Joes need to know, we got to make sure we tell them. Because just like we said earlier, jokingly going to make a compound of people because everyone has different specialties, right? And so the idea is that you teach those in your circle. And so Chris said for the coaching side, it looks a lot like that. It's like off season, we're going to have coaches meetings. Now I know it's hard to get them together because they all go to their multi-sport, right? Because we don't make enough money to do the job. We got to do it multiple times. And so, but you got to have coaching meetings. Go, hey, we need to get better at special teams. What did you do? Hey, this is an assignment I'm going to give you, whatever. We kind of can do that.
Yeah, and clinics too, and everything, right?
Yeah.
Well, like timeout. So you're telling me what you're doing the next time you go, right? Is you're giving a speech, essentially, like you're teaching guys
through like a class, like similar to a class, not officially a class.
Do you know what it is?
Mine will be over.
Yeah, you do. So you're already preparing.
Sure. Yep, I got told about a month ago. So.
Okay, good. So like, I was about to say that's getting into my other forte, which is like speech and drama, where it's like you get your topic and you go do research for for a
I
couple hours.
listened to the first episode y'all did, and I heard you talking about that. That's really cool.
But that's my thing is like, if that's what they're training you for, is that you're able, like Nick said, like he has to address like large groups of people and get them all going on the right track. Like I think that's a part of the military of militaries. So our armed forces. I'm not sure. Make sure I'm being politically correct with all sides here, but like the fact like public speaking being a gift or being a tool that someone in your profession absolutely like it should be deemed necessary.
When I was training,
you know, I mean, like I think that's
when I was training officers at OCS, like that was basically what we were telling them. Like, I'm going to teach you all the Army side, the tactical side, and troop care, but we're also going to get you ready for public speaking. They actually did an assignment for a long time. They would go to the Veterans Center. It's like a hospital here for veterans in their sunset years, and we would go learn everything about them, and then give a class or a presentation to their families that they had a lot of them had no idea what their family member did in the military. And so we would do the history and look it up and get dates. And I mean, I had one of the coolest guys ever. Yes.
That's
but it
awesome.
got you
That's
in front
awesome.
of people about a topic that mattered, right, to the audience. So, I mean, you didn't want to go in there and screw up for sure. So the pressure was on because officers' jobs is just standing. I mean, they just talk to people.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, when people say, "What do you do?" It's like, well, I mean, I go to meetings, I build PowerPoints, I talk to people, I build relationships, right? It's all the domain of it doesn't matter, right? And that's one of the things I think that and I think you can only get a certain amount of that through experience of just doing it. But what's good about it is that to me, it feels like the longer you go, like everything just seems more similar, right? And hence like we're saying about coaching is there's so many analogies. I'm sure that's true if we try to analyze that in some other profession or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of details, and that's one of the things as I'm really trying to build my skills as a coach. That I'm lacking some of the teaching side of the coaching piece, right? Because I've heard Daniel, you and Joe have talked about it, and Kenny. It's like a lot of new coaches, they have experience, but they're younger and they don't necessarily have a lot of leadership experience or leading other peers, which is really the hardest part. I mean, that's leading other adults, is probably harder than in some ways, leading people that are younger. And so, and I'm not by no means am I an expert or perfect at any of that, but that's what I've done for 19 years. But what I haven't done is sit there and try to teach the right technique on, whatever it is, right? Whatever, position you're talking about. And so that's what I'm trying to build up right now, in various ways.
Well, as we'll get into talking football right after this, we're discussing how they are so similar. And I noticed that as soon as I started coaching football, how much these two realms really overlap. And you're right. You could probably talk to a tradesman and they would be like, yeah, I mean, that's basically the same thing, right? Anywhere there's this tiers of responsibility and someone has to do the performance and someone has to do the planning, you're going to find that. But football and military are like uncanny resemblance. It's really scary how similar they are. And you just said it a minute ago, like how even as being an officer in the military, eventually everything got similar.
Right.
Everything became like, this is just what I did 3 or 4 years ago, regurgitated with a different stamp on it. That's concepts, right? You're teaching conceptual things. In your world, it's intelligence. For us, it's, what is power? What is cover 2? These are just concepts. Like, and we talk about increasing the football IQ of our players or coaches even, right? Developing people. Once you get them to realize it's the same stuff over and over again, it gets a lot easier than that fear of the unknown. Running missions in Afghanistan, right? It was the same thing. It's just a concept. We're going to go out the gate. We're going to make a certain number of turns. We're looking for the bad guy. You're making sure you don't park on an IED and you get to the other base, right? Like,
yeah. Well, and I mean, that's another thing too, at the tactical level, like the repetition, right? I mean, you talk about, in the military, being able to execute under stress or whatever, you're not for the most part thinking about, okay, I need to do these 5 steps. I mean, that's how you learn it, is you learn it that way initially, but then it's muscle memory through reps and all of that. It's the same thing, with football, and it's for sure.
You kind of jumped all in with football, right? Like how many years did you assistant coach before you were the head coach?
Sorry. As far as the youth stuff goes, yeah. Well, so like I think you were saying before, we were in Hawaii, and so and that was my command tour, right? So I was busy, which was great, but I didn't necessarily show up there with a plan of like, hey, I'm going to go and coach my son, right? Because I'm like, I know I'm going to be busy. So I've got, so like I said, married, and my son right now is in 5th grade, and then my daughter is 14, and she's in 8th grade. She does school cheer and like competitive or all-star cheer, which is, I mean, I don't know if you guys have experience with that, but
my wife was one of those.
It is intense.
Well, she was a flyer in her day, and then taught gymnastics after that. And like,
yeah, he was a flyer as well. I mean, and those are.
And my wife's the head cheer coach at the high school I taught at.
Yeah, I mean those are some athletes. Yeah. I'll tell you that, man. I mean, it's amazing what they can do. So she's been doing that probably for 7 or 8 years. And at the time, I think my son, maybe he was in, I can't remember, 3rd grade, 2nd grade, I don't remember. But he kind of tried. He's a really physical kid, so he does football and wrestling. I'm thinking maybe we'll try and start maybe do track in the spring here, but he doesn't, so we tried baseball, we tried a couple of things, and it was just kind of, no shade on baseball or whatever, but you just a lot of standing around, especially at the youth level. And so he one day he was like, hey, Dad, I think I want to try and play football. And I was like, okay. And I never really pushed it on him or anything. It was kind of up to him. So started off doing flag there in Hawaii. But I just, we signed him up, and, my wife and I showed up to the first practice, and there was just one coach out there. And he was doing fine, but it was just him. And, I could tell. And so I was standing there on the sideline and like looking at Lindsay. I was like, should I, she was like, yeah, go. So afterwards I was like, hey, you want help, He was like, yes, I would love help. So I was like, all right, fine, great. And so started doing that. And then that coach ended up leaving the league, like I think the next season. And the league director, it was I-9 Sports, which I don't know if they have it in other states, but pretty well organized deal. And so the league director was like, hey, do you want to kind of keep this team? And so I said, yeah. And it ended up being a team that mostly consisted of kids from the base on Hickam. We had a couple of local kids too, which was awesome. And so we just did that. And I just absolutely loved every second of every part of it, right? And especially just being there with the kids and seeing them succeed, right? Like go through a long period of time where they're not succeeding, and then getting a concept or getting some success. And so we did that. And at one point I had I started trying to get other assistant coaches. So I had like 3 or 4 assistant coaches, and at a certain point, my son like aged up into the next age division. I can't remember what it was, and one of my assistant coaches, his son was still going to be in the younger group, and I was like, and I think like half of the kids were, and I was like, well, why don't you just keep? We were the Wolverines, and so I was like, you just keep that team, and then you feed kids up to us. And I was like, we'll keep the same playbook, and all of that. So he did. We would scrim each other occasionally. And so then that kept going for a while. And then I had another guy and his son come and play with us. And he was older. And so he was going to age up himself before we were. And so then I kind of convinced him. I was like, well, you start a team in the older age group. And then we'll have 3, right? And so we did. And so we had like shirts. We had everything, right? And so we did. And the cool thing was in Hawaii, we played every quarter. So we played for 8 weeks. So it was like 8 weeks on, 4 weeks off for 2 years. And that's all we did.
That's
play
awesome.
flag football, which is great. I mean, especially at that age. And so I think, he ended all of that in 3rd grade. Yeah. So because he was in 4th when we moved here. But that was my first, introduction into coaching at all. And I think when I started, I found your podcast because that was with Joe, because I think it was before your podcast with Kenny existed. Because I was like, man, and it started because I was basically just trying to name my plays. I was like, how does this done? I was like, because and you guys talked about before, it's like when you're playing, coaches don't, at least they don't really teach you that. Like you don't really learn unless you're in a unique experience. At least I didn't, right? And so I was like, how would I even do this? If I have a new concept, I'm like, what do I call it? Right? I had no idea. And so I found, you and Joe's podcast, and started getting ideas and all that. And then when we left there, we were gonna move here, and we were like, hey, we're gonna transition into tackle, because he was going into 4th grade, and it seemed like that's what he wanted to do. It was the right time. And so I had a mutual friend, or a friend here that in the Air Force that knew one of the coaches here who was also active duty Air Force, and he said, hey, I know you guys want to play, you should reach out to DJ. So I did, and I met him on base, and I was like, hey, I want to coach, I want to and so it kind of worked out to where we got onto his team, and we do like a draft, in the youth league here, because we're fortunate to have a lot of kids that want to play. And so, like, for example, we had this year in the seniors age group, which is 5th and 6th, we had 3 teams of, I think, 20 to 22 each. So we do a draft, but we got onto his team, and just an awesome time, and tried to learn as much as I could. And then, so that year we had 2, this was our first year. And then this year we had the 3rd team. And so, that same guy called me. He was like, hey, do you want to head coach it? And I was like, absolutely. Well, so I knew that it wouldn't be the same experience, right? Because those are my best friends now, right? Those guys that I coached with, and that's like, and we wrestle with them, and I mean, year round. Those are my guys.
But are they invited to eat any of that brisket tomorrow?
Oh yeah.
That's them.
And so, but I knew, like, because so with going to the other team, like I wasn't gonna be on their team anymore, and then it wasn't. I knew it was not necessarily not going to be as much fun, but just a different deal, right? Like you're the head coach, so you're dealing with all of the things that the assistant coaches aren't dealing with. But I was able to find some other awesome assistant coaches.
Chris is shaking his head. He got a piece of that this year too.
Yeah.
That head coach experience.
So, but that was also awesome because then I was like, man, I really, that's really when I got into Kenny stuff. I was like, first of all, I found out that I was taking this team like a week before the draft. And then I was like, man, I need an offense. I knew I was going to do 4-2-5 because I've been studying Joe's stuff for a couple of years at that point. But so it was great. And I did my best to teach it, even though I was learning at the same time to the assistant coaches. And we, and that's a gap scheme offense, which is not very common, at least in our area at the youth level. And people were like, you can't do that. They're not going to know. They're not going to be able to do it. But we did. So, and, Daniel, you saw it.
And pretty well. I mean, y'all went like, not the finals, but semifinals?
Yeah, we did. We did in the semifinals. But it was just a ton of fun. And then all kinds of other stuff, which we can get into, kind of fell out from that. But I've definitely, it's absolutely my passion. And that's kind of how that's what I want to do. Right. So
I'll tell you what stinks, because I think football is my passion too. Like I found it way late in life and I love it. And there's nothing like it. I mean, obviously besides the military, but when you don't have to worry about an 8-year contract, it sure makes it a lot funner. Right. But it's hard because it doesn't pay very well. And so you're kind of stuck doing this thing for free. It has to become a hobby. You have to love it.
Yeah.
Otherwise you would quit. If it's on money, you're done way, way sooner. You know what I mean? Like you would never stick around with this.
Yep.
I think teaching is the same thing. Oklahoma's always been really low on teacher pay anyway.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing that as we continue to lose teachers to other states. I live 12 miles from the Arkansas border, and I think it's a $15,000 or $20,000 pay raise just across the border. But they're gobbled up because everybody else in Oklahoma is trying to get over there too, right? So it becomes harder to get there.
Right.
But,
right.
So it stinks that we have such a passion for a thing that it's that like gratitude, I think is the term, like when you give and just don't accept anything in return, right? That's almost what we have in this profession.
Yeah.
Maybe someday we'll be college coaches and make some bank. I got a question for your son. So you talked about he transitioned in 4th grade from flag to tackle.
Yeah.
So that made him 10 years oldish?
Yeah, he turned 10, that year.
Do you think that's a good time to do that? I'm sure there's a lot of dads out there that don't know about when they should bump their kid up. It's the same like when you go from coach pitch to kid pitch in baseball, right?
Yeah,
what is the age, and did you like that age, or would you have done it different?
It was great for him. And I think in our case, it was good for him to get a little bit of confidence and enjoyment of the game in flag. And then when he was ready, kind of transition into tackle. I think it might be, it would be from a safety standpoint. I don't see any reason to wait, because if you watch a youth team or youth kids play at a younger age than that, let's say, 6-7 year olds. I mean, the speed that they're going is like the contact is so slow that to me, and at least in my experience, it's not as, the injuries, we really I haven't seen that, right? At least being involved here for 2 years, there's certainly injuries that happen, but it's not like more or something than you would see it at other levels, because all of the kids are basically at the same level, right? Right. And I think that changes more the older you get. So for right now, I think it made sense for the way we did it. But I could see any other parents deciding other things too. I think nowadays it seems like probably a good idea to at least get a year before school ball starts in 7th grade, because just with how kids and other parents are approaching it, that's what most people are doing. And so if you don't, you're probably behind a little bit conceptually, and being comfortable with that.
And that we saw it also. That's when kids get hurt, right? Is when they're not trying, because they're confused, they're lost, they're standing around. Now they're ear holed into a concussion or a whatever.
Yeah, I mean, the more it's counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah.
And I think another big question of that, Chris, is sometimes it's just because of my experience, but it's hard to trust coaches with my son if I'm not out there coaching it too, right? It's like, who am I really sending these people off to? Now, in Nick, obviously in your area, there's some good coaches. Chris, where you're at, you guys kind of eat, breathe, sleep football, so that there's some good youth coaches. But I've been to some games where it's like, I don't know, there's a lot of coaching going on. You know what I mean? It's like they just draft the best team they can and they don't develop anyone. And if they don't get a good team, they just suck that year and they move on to the next one. There's not that development. That worries me. You see these videos online that go viral that's like kids concussing each other in 4th grade or 3rd grade or because of complete lack. What is the big trend right now is adults putting on shoulder pads and running against kids. Like, what the hell are you doing? So it scares me to put my son out there into a league where that's the type of guy who might be coaching him.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I have time to go coach.
But I think so Chris, do you guys have like a youth developmental program that's kind of tied to your school, at least loosely? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. Yes. Yeah. And that is what I always tried to have as uh, my guiding purpose as a head coach, was that the purpose of this is to develop these kids for the school. Because like you can and it's fine to, I mean, the purpose of obviously the sport is to win the game and all that, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. You should, right? Kids need to understand that. But at the end of the day, we're trying to develop these kids, and you have to keep that as your main purpose, because that will change the choices that you make, right? Whether it's playing time, whether it's any other thing. And yeah, we're fortunate to have a similar situation here with our head coach Granger Shook, um, and the Pike Road program in his second year here really has facilitated a lot of that integration. So we got, and that's really how I got involved with the varsity, was through those relationships. So our offensive coordinator, Jonathan Chandler, so we had, I think before our draft, we had kind of like you said, a little mini clinic where the OC, the DC, and the strength and conditioning coach, we kind of had sessions with them, and it's like, hey, here's the terminology, here's the things that we want you kind of teaching them. And JC at the end of his talk said, hey, if anybody wants to get together, more and do that, talk and learn, reach out to me. So I did, and he really meant that, and so I've learned a ton from him, and it's led to a lot of goodness for my development as a coach, but I think also hopefully for at least our team and the team that I coached this year, to just pass things along. And I would have, so there's another awesome coach that is on the varsity staff. His name is Levi, and he's a young guy. He's doing his master's at Auburn, and he's our tight ends coach on the varsity. But he would come out a couple of times, to our practices, and I was running, I think, Dan, you remember when we installed Wham, I think, at one point, and it was like an H motion Wham, and so the the two technique that was kind of coming in from the guard that was
the defenses you saw.
Hey,
Chris, he would have a 2-eye, 1-1, 2-eye, like, because he was running buck. And so he would have 4 interior linemen inside the guards. And it's like, yeah, you can't pull the guards. They ruined buck for you. Here's what else we're going to do.
So, hey, man. Hey, so
when they stack them up in there, you got to have an answer.
Yeah. So I'm like, hey, a guy's going to come through. So, all right. So I'll motion the H back and then, create that space. But anyway, so Levi and we were doing it. This is probably our second or third week. And, this other coach Levi came out and was like, hey, we ran it. And he was like, hey, make sure when you're coming across, you block their inside shoulder like that. And I was like, well, that's obvious. That makes sense. But I never taught it that way because I didn't think about it. Right. But he said that. And I was like, okay, now forever, I know that now. Right. But it took him being there. So that's the kind of thing that you can't, I mean, yeah, you can watch, and I have watched endless YouTube videos or read or whatever. Right. But having a guy that's there that just says something and you're like, okay, that makes sense. Like, it totally makes sense. And now I've got it. Right.
Hey, Coach, what you fell into is what a lot of us do, and that's assuming, right? We make a lot of assumptions that people know a certain thing or don't know. Right. That's just like we're so bad at communicating as coaches that you run into that crap all the time. And sometimes it's like, I know it, so my assistant coach should know it. But it's not true. Like, you have to teach them. Just because you have this vast amount of knowledge of a play doesn't mean that they know anything. And so it's you didn't do anything we haven't all done 1,000 times by not knowing that or by not teaching it, even if you knew it.
And I didn't even know, right? Like, necessarily. Like, when he said that, I was like, it made intuitive sense, obviously, or that would be how you. But I was kind of like, man, why didn't I think of that, right? So, but it's great. I love it. Hmm.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's why it's the greatest team sport that exists, because you need absolutely every kid. It doesn't matter how far down on the depth chart they are now or whatever, because like I can tell you, it's hard to run a practice with 22 kids, or really how many show up, 19, right? Because somebody's out or whatever, right? And so um, you need all of them, and your job as a coach is to create a role for them that provides value and that they understand what that value is, because they're just as much of a part of that if your scout team or whatever. I mean, like, the better their reps are, the better the starters reps are going to be, and they should get the credit for that. And there's no reason we can't create that environment for everybody.
Hearing you say that as a youth coach, like that's what we're trying to get every youth coach to understand. And I mean, honestly, every level needs to have that ideology of you can't just run them off. Like I'm sure there's teams out there having tryouts and like somebody doesn't make the team, but I've never seen it. Did y'all ever cut anybody at Bixby, Chris? No, they just become.
Hmm. Right. Yeah. Hmm.
Well, I have to give all credit to Cameron. He sent me the pictures. I just printed them up. So he 100% was the one digging through. I won't take it if it's not due. Part of my coaching packet, of course, I'm still chasing that first head coaching job, but a big part of it is like in the player's creed is do your job, and if your job is to be the starting quarterback and we're going to go win a state championship, great. You've got to play at starting quarterback state championship level. If you're the scout team defensive end and all your job is to get tricked and kicked and wall whatever all weekend long, then or that's your job. You be a state championship level scout team defensive end. Like, and I hope that more coaches out there are kind of taking that on and trying to get those kids involved. I don't know if I could ever cut a kid. Like, it would be very, very difficult. And of course, with football dwindling anyways, people are going more towards sprint football or flag football. I mean, these are things that are becoming collegiate sports now because of the lack of participation in traditional football. I know it's starting to pay kids more, right, at the college level, but there's less spots now.
Mm.
So there's even less availability for those kids to go anywhere. Man, you just got to keep them on the team and make sure they have a home. And I always think of it like this: it doesn't matter how many's out there. That's more people for me to impact in my life.
Yeah.
If I'm just sending them off because they're the trouble child or because they can't show up all the time or whatever, that's just one less person that I've helped, that I have, guided into what eventually is a really difficult adulthood. Like, life sucks once you get out of high school.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what I think you remember. That's what the kids remember. That's what I remember as a player is, yeah, you remember some games and everything, but really like what it was like just to be with everybody and have the relationships, right? So, absolutely.
So I got to ask about kind of the future of where you're going. I know you talked about being close to retirement, and you don't have to make any official statements on that, but
Yeah.
I do want to know about, like, do you plan to follow your son through his teams?
Yeah,
Are you going to become a junior high or middle school coach, or will you just let someone else kind of pour into him?
yeah. I mean, so don't know 100%, but what I'm working towards is becoming, a high school coach, a teacher and coach. The timing of that depends on a number of things, and kind of where we're at as a family and all of that. And, the good thing about, so my wife is in grad school right now at Auburn. And so she'll start her career, which is great for her because she has, really, moving around, as you know, right? In the military for 19 years. She has worked, but hasn't really been able to establish her career. And so, after we made the decision that this is where we're going to stay, then it was just a matter of when is the timing of that retirement going to be, right? And so,
Right.
because I could retire, next summer, or I could wait a little bit, or if I retired next summer, I could immediately go. Oh, someone just said, I don't know what just happened with the Alabama game. My son just yelled, but so part of it is that sort of where are we at, like you said, financially, and everything. So what I might do is, after I retire, find something that's flexible, in terms of, whatever that is, and then just keep volunteering, with the varsity. Right. But, I will do that as much as I possibly can and learn as much as I possibly can, until I can then basically get teacher certified and then get hired somewhere, wherever that is. And I mean, part of it too is kind of like you, I know in your experience, like you're in an area where you want to stay from a family standpoint. And so where that is, I don't know. I mean, the Montgomery area isn't huge, but it's probably big enough to where you could move around within, an hour commute of wherever you're going to work. Right. And so I don't really know, but, probably my goal would be within the next 2 years to be a professional coach at that point. As far as my son goes, I mean, I've got one more year coaching him, which will be next year in his 6th grade year, which is, just the most fun thing ever. I mean, it is a lot of fun, to coach him. But it's where, if I'm not coaching, I might be volunteering. But if I'll have to just trust, like you said, all right, wherever he's at, that's where he's going to be. And hopefully I've given him, enough of a base to have success. And most of that really is mental and everything else. Right. And so I think he absolutely has that. He's a really smart kid for sure.
He listens to the podcast and stuff too.
Yeah,
right?
he does. He
invested in football.
Yeah, he knows a lot, and you've seen him. He's one of the smaller kids, but he knows where to go, right? Because Luke Kuechly is like his favorite player because he's like who he doesn't even play obviously anymore, but he's like always in the right place because he watches film, right? So it's a lot of fun.
I think Kenny Simpson's son was kind of that exact role. Like, he's the brainiac that just you have to have him on defense because he helps other people be better with his knowledge. But I think he was All-State this year, if I'm not mistaken, as a junior. So
well, it's funny too because a lot of the kids like
it stands out. I don't know. I have to go check. I think it was. No, I think his son plays safety. I'll go back and look. Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
I don't think that's his son. I'll have to check.
But yeah, they one of the one of the kids on our team this year accidentally called him Coach Rhett because they were like, and so but then that kind of like stuck. So it's funny.
Setting the tone, baby.
Yeah.
Set the tone.
Yeah.
Hey, that's what you need, though. We all would like to have, somebody out there that's keeping the same message on the field because we can't be on the field, right?
Yeah, I mean,
So it would work
it's huge for sure. So yeah, I mean, it's great to have to be in the situation that we're in here with the integration, like we talked about earlier, Chris, with the varsity program and the youth program, to build those relationships and to get the opportunities to volunteer with the team. So I started doing the stats for the varsity this past year, which is great, like, in-game stats and then just keeping our max preps up to date and all of that. But I have, like I said, developed a relationship with those coaches, and Coach Chandler was, gracious enough with his time to share a lot with me. And so I think it was like Columbus Day week where like Monday was off, and I was like, well, I've got leave. I'll just take the rest of the week off. And I was like, hey, can I just come up here and help, just coach, and he was like, yeah. And I know just through talking to other people like Daniel and listening to the podcast that that's not necessarily common to where people would integrate you in. And so it's huge. I mean, the staff that we have here at Pike Road is amazing. I mean, and so I'm just really fortunate to have that experience. So I learned a lot, even just in that 1 week. But then, I would go on Fridays, like especially if we had an away game, I would usually take the day off and then go just do the day with them. And Thanksgiving, I took that week off because we were in the playoffs and was able to be there for that. So
did y'all get to the varsity get to the state championship game?
Not this year, no. But that's what we'll be next year. So
good. Well, sweet, man. Well, we're just over an hour here, and not that we can't talk longer, but I know that other people they got things to do, so we'll start wrapping it up here. If someone, well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for what you're doing for youth football, because it's scary. Like, it's scary when you see all the, and I talked about it earlier, those viral clips of like just coaches doing stupid stuff or doing Oklahoma drill. First of all, if you're a coach and you're still using Oklahoma drill, like you're wrong. It's outdated. Anytime, it's not realistic even, right? Like, there's so many better ways to try to do open field tackling. At no point is that a realistic thing. It doesn't, we're going to have blockers. We're going to have stuff going.
Yeah, we basically just do like a half line as our thing. And what I tried to do is like put whatever their main offensive run play in on the half line and then line our defense up to it. and just run that from the.
But you have kind of given me a refreshed look at youth ball and understand there's guys out there really trying to learn and install concepts and get kids trained up, because there's nothing worse than like getting a freshman class that does not have football IQ. You know what I mean? Like that's the worst feeling, is I actually can't use this kid. And I've been in a lot of small schools where freshmen might need to play. But you hate to put them out. It's scary to put them out there because they don't know what they're doing. So I appreciate you being one of the good guys and trying to develop kids before they get on the varsity squad, just to help them out in their career. And it helps the coaches above you. Some people see like freshman teams or junior high or whatever as like a demotion, and I just don't really think it is. I think I would even say your second best coach on staff probably should be down at the junior high level, prepping those kids to come do good things on the varsity side, right? So anyway, I appreciate you for doing those things. Thank you for that. Appreciate you coming on to the show today. Tell us if somebody wanted to reach out to you and ask about like joining your team or getting resources you've used or whatever, where can they reach out to you at?
Yeah, absolutely. So my email is Nick, Nick, JH 1836 @gmail. And then I am kind of on X, Twitter, but it's FB Coach Hall, which I got, so I thought that was cool. And Facebook, you can find me on there probably, Nick Hall. But yeah, email is good, and I love talking to people, and especially collaborating on different things, and really trying to bring other concepts in that you wouldn't necessarily think about, whether that's technology or like leadership concepts, or just because I think as much as I have to learn about different techniques and different things about how to teach football, whatever I can bring from other experiences, that's what I try to do, right? Is like so any ideas like that, I always love brainstorming with people on, hey, how can we bring those different domains that seemingly don't apply, but maybe, hey, we can take the best of that and apply it to our sport. For
sure. Well, awesome, man. Once again, thanks for coming on. We'll close out, Chris. Excellent. Do you want to share your contact info so people can, get a hold of you? Skull.
Yeah.
I call it Twitter /.
Am I? Or oh, yeah, that's what I've been doing this year. Yeah. I mean, I said, well, okay. And I know Daniel went through this. Like, I love thinking about offense and come right. It's so creative. But I played defense, and I feel like that's like fun, right? So yeah, I probably am an offensive guy. If you had to pick somewhere, but like I love defense too. So
I appreciate that each coordinating job made me better at the other side of the ball.
Yeah.
So I started on defense, and it made me think about football differently. And that way, when I jump ship to the easy side where the rules aren't against you all the time,
yep,
I kind of knew what those guys are trying to accomplish. So it helped.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we'll get out of here. Appreciate you so much for your time. This will go out on, I don't know, like next Tuesday or something. I don't know what day.
Yeah.
Nick, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Chris is gone. Nice leopard tiger chair. All right, thank you guys.
A lot. Have a good New Year.
Well, cowboys are back in style, and I know it's been a while, and I often dream of you and your half green baby blues, and the way your dimples sink into your smile.